Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Grand Rounds. My name is Tom Farden and I'm the chair of Grand Rounds, although I seemingly don't know where the meeting's meant to be. But we are here in the Wolfson Lecture Theatre today for Grand Rounds. Thank you very much for coming. I have a few parish notices before we hand over to the team who are going to talk about cervical cancer prevention. We've got a group of people, I think, a number of people, and we've got Sarah Stool to stand on. But I'll kick off with some parish notices before we, and I'll get out of the way so I can have my lunch. Local hairdresser Kim Innes marked World Cancer Day last weekend by donating £900 she raised on behalf of clients battling the disease to the University of Dundee's Medical Oncology Department. She raised money through the generous sponsorship of friends, family and customers who paid for the privilege of watching her leap into the murky waters of Broughty Ferry at the New Year's Duke. The cheque was received here by Professor Russell Petty, Chair of Medical Oncology. So well done to her, the crazy fool she is. Not that I can talk about jumping into freezing water, obviously, but there you go. A ceremony in Kuwait has seen almost 50 new University of Dundee graduates handed their awards in diabetes care, education and management. The university has been delivering postgraduate education in Kuwait for 5 years, helping tackle the country's chronic diabetes problem. The university has been central to establishing world-leading standards of diabetes research and treatment in Tayside. The expertise which has underpinned the revolution in diabetes care is now being applied to Kuwait in partnership with the Dasman Diabetes Institute and the Ministry of Health in Kuwait. If you're an undergraduate who has completed a BMSc, fourth year project, SSc or vacation studentship in diabetes or endocrinology in the last 18 months, you can be in with a chance of winning £200, £100 for the runner-up. All you need to do is submit a 250-word abstract summarising your project's findings. Go to the DCAT website to find out more information. Here are the staff development opportunities this month. The one with the star gives you free lunch. The others, unfortunately, you have to bring your own, but this is a programme of events which has been commended by NES as being a flagship training programme which the rest of Scotland is hoping to follow up on. So if you're involved in teaching undergraduates or postgraduates, pop along to one of those. The School of Medicine is marking LGBT History Month with a photo competition, inviting students, staff and NHS colleagues and the general public even to snap a picture of anything rainbow related and share it on Instagram or Twitter with the hashtag Dundee Rainbows. And the winner, judged by the school's LGBT Champions Group, will receive a £20 Amazon voucher. More information and inspiration is available at the Dundee Rainbows website. And here's the schedule of events going on around the school to celebrate LGBT History Month, including Grand Rounds next week with Graham Leslie, with a still as yet unnamed talk centred around LGBT issues. There you go, continuing the theme next week, LGBT. And finally, we can move on over to Wendy. Is Wendy starting? Yes. There needs to be a small change of technology, he says. Maybe it's VGA. There you go. So without further ado, I welcome Wendy McMullen and the cervical cancer team. On we go.
Lovely, thanks Tom. Thank you everybody for coming. So this isn't about me, this is about the whole team. I'm Wendy McMullen, I'm the Gynae Cancer Lead for NHS Tayside. I'm going to set the scene by talking about a few of the facts that we know about cervical cancer prevention. I'm then going to hand over to Dr. Agapathy, who's the colposcopy lead, who's going to talk about barriers to screening in conjunction with two of our clinic nurses, Elaine Cooper, who's one of our first nurse colposcopists in Tayside, and Sarah Lyons, who works in the clinic in Arbroath. And finally to Emma Fletcher, who's our acting public health consultant, who's working with us on local initiatives. Oh, sorry. Can't see it on the screen. So we were all very shocked by the death of Jade Goody in 2009 from cervical cancer, and that provoked a massive awareness about the reality of cervical cancer. The figures are that in the time around Jade's diagnosis, we saw a 20% increase in the uptake of cervical screening, and across the whole UK, we did an extra 500,000 smears at around that time. But unfortunately, we all have short memories, and very sadly, screening uptake rates are now back down to an all-time low. And in association with that, we've seen an increase in the incidence of cervical cancer. And shockingly now in Scotland, over 2 women every week die from cervical cancer, from what we feel really should be a preventable disease. Globally, it's even more shocking. This is the global incidence of cervical cancer. I spent some time in Malawi, and you can see that West Africa and East Africa are the sort of red areas for the incidence of cervical cancer. In Malawi, 7 out of 100 women lose their lives to cervical cancer, often at a young age, often when they're caring for young children. By the time we all go and start our clinics at 2 o'clock, 50 women will have died from cervical cancer worldwide, often in very tragic circumstances. So how do we prevent it? Well, firstly, we have primary prevention. What we know is that over 99% of cervical cancers are caused by the HPV virus. And although there are at least 14 oncogenic strains of HPV, at least 2/3 of the cancer are caused by just 2 strains, the 16 and 18. These viruses don't just cause cervical cancer, they cause multifocal orogenital cancer in women and in men. In Scotland, we've had a vaccination programme against HPV since 2009 with a very good uptake. Over 90% of Scottish school children have been vaccinated, and we know that the safety record of the vaccine is excellent. This is partly because of the work of the Scottish HPV Investigators Network, which tracks the rolling out of the vaccine extremely carefully. So, for example, we now know that it's safe to only give 2 doses of the vaccine. We know that if the vaccine is given to HPV-naive women, then protection against these 2 high-risk strains, 16 and 18, is absolute. And for the last couple of years, we've offered the quadrivalent vaccine, which isn't a cancer issue, but it also protects against the development of genital warts. So in terms of secondary prevention, and that's cervical screening, it's important to emphasise that vaccinated women still need screening because their reduction in cancer risk is only 2/3. And of course, there's a huge cohort of women, anybody over the age of 25, who won't have been vaccinated against HPV. Cervical cancer is an ideal disease for screening and prevention, partly because of where the cervix is. You can look at it, you can feel it, you can take samples from it. And when we take a smear from the cervix, we can send that for cytological analysis, or we can send it for HPV testing. The biology of the disease is that there's a long pre-malignant phase, usually at least 10 years, and during that phase we have treatment that is safe and effective with minimal side effects. So procedures such as loop excision of abnormal cells or thermocoagulation, which we used to call cold coagulation for destroying abnormal cells, can be done very straightforwardly in the outpatient setting. I'm just going to digress a little bit and talk about so-called CARAF. That's the change in age range and frequency for screening. You might know that from last June in Scotland we changed to start screening at 25 rather than 20 and to continue screening until the age of 65. The older age is because older women are still getting cervical cancer and dying from cervical cancer, so we felt this is appropriate. It's going to be a challenge for us in colposcopy because it's harder to screen postmenopausal women. We've also decided to start screening at 25, which brings us into line with England. There's never been any good evidence that screening under the age of 25 is effective. We know that transient HPV infection and transient smear abnormalities are very common in the under 25s, and if we screen that group, we get a lot of referrals to colposcopy, arguably with over-investigation, potentially over-treatment, with all the emotional and potential reproductive knock-on effects of that. So since last June, we start screening at 25. Now, just because some of you students in the audience will be in this 20 to 25-year-old age range, this is to clarify, if you started before last June screening at 20 and you've had your first smear and you're in the system, you carry on having smears every 3 years, even if your next smear will be under the age of 25. And that's partly because you probably will have been vaccinated, but you'll have been in the catch-up campaign. So you probably weren't vaccinated in S2, you were probably vaccinated in S3, S4, S5, when some of your cohort would have been sexually active and already exposed to HPV. But if you look at your little sisters who are 19 or 20, they'll have been optimally vaccinated when they were in S2, and they've got maximum protection. And definitely in that group, the risks of screening under the age of 25 outweigh the benefits, and that's why we've gone for the change. But the message to go along with that is when you reach 25, you must come for your smears, because we have a particular problem with uptake in the age 25 to 35 age group. And symptom awareness is important at all ages. That's the other message. So yes, occasionally young women do get cancer. Occasionally people who have a normal screening history get cancer. So any women who have suspicious symptoms, i.e. persistent or significant unscheduled bleeding, should be examined to exclude the possibility of a cervical cancer. Just a little digression to my work in Malawi, because I think I learned a lot of things from that. I learned how incredibly important education is. So these women in Malawi, a lot of them can't read, they don't get appointments, they don't get letters, they can't have patient information leaflets, but by word of mouth, they know about the sort of pop-up clinics that have been set up. They walk to these clinics, and the first thing that happens is they have an education session where they're told all about the HPV virus, they're told about the causes of cervical cancer, they're told about screening and prevention, and they're told what will happen to them if they are screen positive. And they're very engaged and they're very interested. And then the next lesson is the importance of CPD and disseminating the information. So I don't know if any of you will know Professor Heather Kubi. She's the visiting professor of virology who came to Malawi, and she was trawling through the HPV data in the lab. And then to tie up at the end of what was a 3-year project supported by the Scottish Government, we had a meeting to disseminate and share information. And amazingly, this was opened by the First Lady of Malawi. The First Ladies of Africa are very passionate about cervical screening. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if Nicola Sturgeon just had a pop to the Grand Round? We had the medical director of the hospital there, but I want to point out this lady. This lady is one of the village elders, and what they've realised in Malawi is you have to speak to the community leaders. So people like this were very sceptical about the programme when it was first rolled out, but then they became huge converts, and they encouraged hundreds and thousands of women to attend for cervical screening. So really, the message in Malawi is the same as it is here. It's all about team working, about community engagement, about identifying people in the community who will spread the message, but that message has to be supported by facts and evidence and quality assurance, and you have to have political engagement. Because we don't want this. We see people coming into clinics still or presenting to the ward with advanced disease. They present with hydronephrosis, renal failure, vesicovaginal fistula, rectovaginal fistula, and it still happens even in Dundee, even in Scotland. And it makes you want to cry because this could have been prevented. And just to say, the reason we're talking today is because this week is the week of the launching the Scottish cervical screening campaign. All the GPs have been sent literature about this, and there's an online toolkit, but any of us can access this, and there's some very good questions and answers that you can work through. And some of you might have seen this on social media, and Emma's going to come and show this video at the end of the presentation. But the messages are: smear uptake's at an all-time low in Scotland. We have to do something about this. We have to understand the change in age range. We have to know that we still need to act on suspicious symptoms. Get across the message that pre-malignant change can be easily treated in the outpatient setting. And most importantly, we need strategies to engage the hard to reach. We need to break through the barriers. We need to find solutions, and we need to throw a lifeline to these women who, in our opinion, are unnecessarily dying of cervical cancer. And with that, I'll hand over to Dr. Agapathy.
So good afternoon, everybody. Let us start. We start with a puzzle. Okay, you get 30 seconds to solve the puzzle. If you know the answer, just get up and yell out. And I've got a healthy prize for the one who gets it. Okay? So if A is 26, B is 25, C is 24, etc., etc., guess the word. 30 seconds. Gynecologists are welcome to take the question. Who got that? Fantastic. Thank you. Please pass it on. Okay, we're all wanting healthy lifestyles, so that's an ample. So the smear is the single most powerful weapon we have for preventing cervical cancer in the first place and reducing the risk of cervical cancer. I just wanted some attention here before I start. So what are the known facts? It's misbehaving again. It's not passing through. Yeah. So when we compare the different parts of the United Kingdom, Scotland and Northern Ireland have got the highest rates of cervical cancer, 11.6 for 100,000 women. And if we compare against health boards in Scotland, it's very unfortunate that we have the distinction, NHS Tayside, of being the highest of cervical cancer rates, 15.3 per 100,000 women. So we did an audit in 2015 where we had about 38 cervical cancers, and you can see that there were 60% cancers unfortunately diagnosed beyond stage 2, and 70% was only because of symptom presentation. But the most important message we got from that audit was those women diagnosed with cancer, if they've had an adequate cervical screening history, all of them were in stage 1, all of them had radical treatment, and mostly it was surgery. That was the key message we took from that audit. So that's what it showed. Adequate screening not only prevents cancer by successfully treating the precancer phase, but also translates to early stage of diagnosis of cervical cancer, and it enables radical treatment, preferably surgery in the younger women, so they don't get radical radiotherapy. If we do wait for symptoms, it is going to be beyond stage 2. So we called a campaign, Cervica. That was the campaign we initiated to promote cervical screening uptake in Tayside. It was a very long journey, very difficult, lots of outcomes, lots of events. So I've just used Rudyard Kipling's 6 Honest Men to take you through the journey of what we did, why we did, who were involved, when and where we did this, and how did we do at the end. So why Cervica? It's exploring the unknown barriers for cervical screening uptake. Any thoughts on why I put up this slide? Sorry? Yes? To do with cervical screening? Barriers? No, I was just checking if you're still engaged with me, okay? This is one of Bansky's very important art. He's a very prolific artist, and I thought, I'll just put this up to get your attention back, okay? So screening uptake in Tayside currently is around 70%. Not that bad, as in like we're in the bottom 4 when compared to the other health boards, okay? And there has been a steady decline over the years. But our primary concern is what's happening to that 30% women who are not engaging with screening. Those are the most vulnerable, and those are the most susceptible for cervical cancer. So our concentration was on the vulnerable group, those with learning disabilities, domestic abuse or sexual abuse in past, chaotic lifestyle, and believe it or not, busy career women. I think me and Wendy are up to date with smears in case somebody is thinking about it, okay? So what can we do to improve screening uptake? We could sit and pray for a jade goody, or we took the plunge, what is called as social marketing. So social marketing is a group of activities aimed at not only changing people's behavior, but also maintaining it for their health benefit. So wherein like a commercial marketing, the net result is, are we making good profit? In social marketing, we are going to see for the final aim, are we having good health at the end of the social marketing? So this was, I'm very, very proud. This is my core group. More than me and Wendy, it was Elaine Cooper, our nurse colposcopist, and Nicola Trotter, a medical student who did lots of work for this Cervica. Throughout the Cervical Cancer Prevention Week, which was just a fortnight before, we had awareness stalls at Segata, Perth, Nine Wells, and Arbroath Infirmary. We just invited women to engage with us to talk about screening, any queries they might have, and we gave health promotion packs. If you wondered what was in it, lots of condoms and just a couple of candies. Okay. What did we do? We kickstarted the campaign with a blog that went on the SCPN website on all the digital screens of Dundee Medical University, and this was used in a press release as well. And then we wanted some, posters. We wanted an icon. We wanted a smear icon. I wanted somebody as impressive as Wonder Woman, or perhaps as dynamic as Black Widow. But then we created Cervica, Tayside's very own smear guru. We have created 8 innovative posters. We incorporated all the queries and concerns a layperson might have about screening and try to address through the single smear icon, who is Cervica. Did you see the touch of the tartanized skirt there, the tartan skirt? That's like the Scottish smear icon, okay? So we made it as engaging and as animated we could possibly do, as in we are the most non-creative people, the medics, but we came out with this. So just exploring, a couple of posters. The first poster, the girl is asking Cervica, oh, I've been vaccinated. Does that mean I don't need to be part of the smear program anymore? And Cervica says, no, you've got to be, both go side by side. Vaccination doesn't protect 100%. And then another young girl says that, I'm 20, but I've not been called. I'm freaking out here. Why have I not been called? And Cervica says, it's fine. The program has changed, so it's okay. You'll be called only when you're 25. And then we go on to some of the fears that women might have, that they're feared of the smear, they're feared of the cervical cancer thing. So Cervica takes the person through as to what happens if there is an abnormal smear. Then some of the things like same-sex relationship, or if they've had no partner for like 10 years, would they still go for a smear test? Somebody who's asking, can I clear the smear abnormality myself? And then this poster, we thought it's very good because we gave the relationship of HPV and smoking to cervical cancer, so something for the women to think about. We are very thankful for a couple of patients who came forward with their stories and allowed us to use the stories on one of the posters. We heavily advertised through Facebook page, and this was shared kindly by many people. We went on Twitter to announce this program. Again, thankful to one of our young cervical cancer survivors who went on Radio Tay on our request to share her cervical cancer journey. This was very warmly received. And then a drop-in smear clinics sessions. Before that, I told you that the awareness stalls were created across the hospitals. For the first time, we went in 2 public places. One was Abbeygate Shopping Centre, and the other was Asda in Forfar, just to talk to the general public as well. The drop-in smear clinics were at 2 sessions, between 6 and 8 at Arbroath and at Forfar. In addition to this, whoever approached the awareness stalls and said that they've been long overdue for their smears, and we were in a hospital setting, we would do the smear for them on that day. So we had 51 overdue smears. 8 of them have never had a smear test. 25% of women were actually overdue by 5 years. The overdue period ranged anywhere between 3 months and a maximum of 20 years. So finally, reflection, how did we do? How can we do this better? Over the period of 2 weeks, we distributed paper questionnaires in the awareness stalls and encouraged women to go online and fill in the questionnaire. We had 252 responses to the 5 questions that we asked. You can see that the age of the respondents was a fair representation of the women who are eligible for cervical screening. Obviously, we were interested in our posters, so we asked them how engaging it was. We got a weighted average of 4.3 on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most helpful. We asked them, is there a reason why you would not go for a smear? It was quite sad. 1 out of 3 women said, yes, they will not go for a smear, or they've never been for a smear. So we explored the barriers further. We asked them why they would not go. 1/3 of them said it was because of time. It was not suitable to book a smear clinic appointment. And the other factors, major factors, was all the emotional factors around smear tests, embarrassment, very difficult examinations in the past. A couple of them actually wrote on the questionnaire that they have been sexually abused. 9% had issues with the staffing in the GP centers. 4% said, I just don't believe in screening. And 9% were actually very fearful of the entire process of smear test, cervical cancer, and other things. So the last question was, how could we possibly increase the awareness and improve uptake? There were a lot of takers for online advertisements such as Facebook, Twitter, and paper copies put up in local shops and pharmacies. But they actually wanted support with flexible clinics. They want more out-of-hours clinics like evening clinics or early morning or drop-in sessions where they could go to if they're not comfortable with their own GPs. So future, how do we remove the barriers? I think Cervica, our campaign, touched a bit of the 3 factors. I think we managed to increase awareness. We provided some support for defaulters and some support for vulnerable women, but it has got to be a far more focused and elaborate approach to support these women. And I think that's possible only if it's a joint effort between primary, secondary care, and public health. So could Cervica be a foundation for something more elaborate, something more sustainable? I completely believe that that's possible, and Emma will tell you why. Public health has just been successful. In a bit, we'll talk to you about it. So just a feel-good slide. This is our laparoscopic ovarian transposition that we have done for a young girl with cervical cancer who had to have radical radiotherapy. So to protect her ovaries, we have taken the ovaries. You can see the uterus in the middle with just the tubes. So we've taken the ovaries all the way from the pelvis and positioned it above the pelvis. It was just actually 2 centimeters below the liver now, the ovaries. And now we are able to offer this if the patients need it. And I will leave you with these thoughts. Can we aim for this for every woman in Tayside? Thank you.
We're the French and Saunders of the group. Not seeing who's who.
Yeah, thanks, Mel.
Yes, you're on.
Okay. I'm over here.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lyons and I work in Arbroath Infirmary Outpatient. I've always worked in women's health since qualifying in 1999, and I work with Elaine in the Arbroath Laparoscopic Clinic. Today we're going to tell you about the Cervical Cancers Awareness Week. We'll introduce you to some of the women we met and then the drop-in smear sessions and tell you why they said they'd not gone for their smears.
And I'm Elaine Cooper. I'm a senior charge nurse in Area 3 at 9 Wells, and I'm also a colposcopist. As a colposcopist, I'm responsible for clinics in 9 Wells and Arbroath, and I have to just say, standing up in public is not my bag at all. So I am reading from this altogether. But when my son was in primary 1 at school, all the kids were asked what their parents did, and my beautiful, beautiful 5-year-old boy stood up and proudly announced to the whole class that his mummy fixes ladies' vaginas. So that is what I do. That's my bag. And serving the women of Tayside is an absolute privilege. So are we moving on? Yeah. So the week prior to Cervical Cancer Awareness Week, Dr. Ragapathy asked me to hand posters into the shops and premises around Arbroath, advertising our drop-in sessions throughout Angus. And on the Saturday morning, I hit the Strathayerley area of Arbroath with my sister, who's a head teacher at one of the local schools. She's a well-kent face in the toon, so it was great to have her with me. Now, I did not go into these shops asking any woman if they were up to date with their smear, whether they had any problem with vaginal issues at all. But all I was asking was for these posters to be displayed at the tills. But women like to blether. The first 2 shops we went into, we spoke to 6 people. 5 women and a bloke. Now, none of the women, not one, was up to date with their smear. Couldn't believe it. One had never had a test, she was just far too afraid. And one, who was a much older lady, had said that her first experience of screening was so bad, so awful, the staff were so awful, that she never went back. And the guy, he said his partner had had lots of letters, but was far too afraid to go. So having hit Arbroath at 11 o'clock, I was sitting outside in my car outside Pie Bob's, and I felt absolutely soul destroyed. I could have cried. And at 12 o'clock, my sister and I did what Broughty Ferry lassies do the best at 12 o'clock, and that was hit the pub. But my spirits were literally lifted when we went into the bar. Lauren Billingham is one of my other Arbroath colposcopy nurse's daughter, and she'd set up a Joe's Trust cervical cancer awareness stall in Wetherspoons. And the heartening thing was there was lots of people around the stall, and they were all engaged with it, and they seemed genuinely interested. So I began to really think that our own stalls and drop-in sessions might just be well received.
As I participated in this awareness event last year, I knew what was expected, but that was in the 9 Wales concourse. But this one was a very public area and people I may know. So first I felt nervous, but my aim was that if I only helped one person, it was a worthwhile event. I spoke to women of all ages. I went up to them saying that this was an awareness week and we were trying to find out why women didn't go for the smears, especially in our local area, which got the ladies talking to me about their experiences and their feelings. What I found from the day is that women still delayed the smears due to time, embarrassment, unfriendliness and discomfort relating to where they get the smears taken. I also felt we need to be proactive with the education of the Hpv immunisation programme.
It's you.
Yeah, I know. This is a waiting room in our both infirmary. We did a bit of just a bit of artistic license by getting our secretary Paul to sit there like they did on the night that we did the drop-in sessions. We'd like to tell you a few stories of the women's stories, the stories that stood out to Elaine and I on the day.
So the first lady I'm going to tell you about is a lady called Anne. She actually came to the 9 Wales stall, and she spoke to Nicola, who was our fantastic medical student. And Nicola asked me to get involved in the conversation. Anne couldn't remember the last time her smear was. It was a long, long time ago. But what she did remember was A, it was very sore, and B, she was too afraid to go back because she was frightened of the result. We asked her to come into Area 3 for a private chat, because this is in the main concourse of 9 Wales Hospital. But she said, I'll think about it. So at 3:30, she arrived in Area 3, having gone all the way home to Muirhead, thought about it, put her coat back on, got back on the bus to 9 Wales, came in and she had the chat with us. She had her smear and it was a breeze, and that was her words, not mine. The result was negative with a 5-year routine recall. Her last smear had been 1993. She was postmenopausal, and we were able to discuss ways that it might be easier for her to have her smear in the future.
Sally's story was disrespect, her words. Sally saw the Arbroath drop-in smear session on Facebook. She has learning difficulties but lives independently. At her last smear test visit, her practitioner couldn't locate the cervix. Sally said the actual speculum examination she could tolerate, but what really upset her was how the practitioner had spoken to her. She felt that she was to blame for the smear taker not being able to get the smear done. She felt that she had done something wrong. Sally was referred to Gyanecology to have a smear done and for the assessment of heavy bleeding. She saw a female gynecologist who was very nice. She got in the coil with a bit of a struggle but didn't do the smear. The GP referred her in again. She was given an appointment with the male gynecologist and first felt she couldn't come. She saw the drop-in session on Facebook. She came. It was a tricky smear, Lane, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sally said she won't go back to the practice, not because of how it felt, but the way she was made to feel, like an idiot. Her words, not mine. Negative smear and with a 3-year follow-up.
The next lady's Pauline's story. And again, we met Pauline at the Abbeygate shopping centre, and she has a 2-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter with special needs, quite a vulnerable child actually. Pauline's overdue her smear test and she just couldn't find time. That was her barrier, was time, because she's juggling everything that she had to juggle. And of course we said, listen, come along to Arbroath tonight, we can do your smear test, bring the kids, we've got staff there that'll, look out for them. And then she saw the poster about HPV vaccination. Her 15-year-old daughter had been offered vaccination and the mum had consented for it, but when it came to the bit, she was just so hyper anxious, afraid of the needle, she couldn't understand, that sort of thing. And the vaccination was not therefore given, and the healthcare providers had promised to mum that they would get back to her and say how they would actually manage it, but they never did. And I actually felt I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. It was kind of out with my remit. And she looked really sad. And I just said to her, listen, the darling Dr. McMullen is at clinic tonight. You come along and you speak to her. I'm sure that she'll be able to help you out. And if not, she'll find the right person to do so. And even if you just get your smear, you can tick that off your list. The Arbroath clinic was really busy. We had an amazing amount of people arrived. And that little waiting room at one point was absolutely full. And I came out to pick my ticket up for my next patient, and I saw Pauline sitting in the waiting room, and honestly that could have brought tears to my eyes, because I really knew that somebody was going to help her, and her smear was negative with a 3-year follow-up, so all that's now off her mind. Oh gosh. So I'm doing the next one as well, it appears. Jean's story. Jean's a retired nurse from Forfar. She's postmenopausal. Her last smear was painful. That was her barrier. She was really uptight about it. She knew the importance of cervical screening but couldn't face going to the practice because it had been so sore before. So she had decided off her own back to explore other routes. She phoned White Hills and they said, no, we don't do the smear here. She phoned Arbroath, they said, no, we don't do smear here. Try sexual health at 9 Wells. Came up to 9 Wells to sexual health and they said, no, don't do a drop-in session here, but if you go to Area 3, they're doing smears this week. And of course, Jean arrived at Area 3, which was a renal clinic on that day, not gynecology. But Elaine Smith, our very perceptive receptionist, realised the lady's distress, and she found one of the gynecology nurses to help her. One of our consultant gynecologists, Dr. Ramalingam, was doing an extra PMB clinic, and without hesitation she saw her and she did her smear. Afterwards, we were able again to discuss reasons for discomfort with having your smear in the post-menopausal age group. But still her parting thought, or parting comment, was where will I go next time? Her smear was negative in 5-year recall.
The last story is the story of the empty chair. This represents the empty chair in GP practices of the 6 women who had never gone for their smear test, the youngest being 26 and the oldest being 36. Some had children, some did not. We were able to discuss the reason for non-attendance: fear of being sore, fear of results, obstructive receptionist, history of abuse. We were able to suggest ways of making smear taking easier. All these women had their smears done with us. This was an extremely rewarding day.
It was.
This is Elaine's clan crest, the Stewarts of Athens, whose motto is, bear with me, whether will you... I knew I'd get that wrong. What is it, Elaine?
Well, Sarah's been saying all week, withered will he? But it's whether will you.
What will you choose? As women, we can choose to have a smear or not, whether to make the time or not. As we reflected on the events of our drop-in session, we felt the choice which some of these women believed they lacked, because for some women, the only port of call is the practices, where they had the test done last time, which was painful or uncomfortable, or like Sally, was made to feel stupid. These women were asking us, if I needed another smear, what would I do? Where would I go? What choice do I have?
We're hoping something that may be addressed with the new campaign. And finally, you'll be glad to hear, this is the last story, a mother and daughter tale. The mother, this again is Abbey Gate, but that was where I was. The mother is 60 years old-ish, and she approached the Abbey Gate stall, and this was the conversation that we had. I have only had one smear all my life. It was absolutely disgusting, and I would never, 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 ever go back. I've had 4 children, never had a bother, and I would never tell anybody to go. It was disgusting. At which point, I stood back, but her 30-ish-year-old daughter stood up and piped up. I agree, Mum, it was really sore. The first one I had was sore, and I thought I'm never going to go back. But that was until I hit the jail. And the prison nurse there said to me, you're overdue your smear, why don't I do it for you now? And I thought, well, I've nothing else to do, so I thought, okay, let's go for it. So I went and had my smear test. These are true stories. I went and had my smear test taken, and it was absolutely fine. So do you know what? Now we just go, and I'll tell any of the girls to go as well. And Sarah or I don't think anybody would advocate incarceration, but whatever works.
Thank you.
such an important time in cervical screening. You can see from the work that was done by this team over the Cervical Cancer Prevention Week, it was just fantastic. There is now a national campaign that was launched yesterday, and there's work ongoing that we will take forward as a result of this.
You want the video, isn't it?
Yeah, if you can copy and paste that. Rates are low, but also within those low rates there are significant inequalities in terms of cervical cancer incidence and mortality. And this is what cheers, thanks Kapana, we're seeking to address. So the national campaign, the ambition is to increase the rates of screening uptake in the lower socioeconomic groups of the ages, particularly 25 to 35, which Wendy alluded to earlier, which is a lower uptake group. The Scottish Cervical Screening Campaign aims to raise awareness of the benefits of screening. It aims to empower women who are overdue a smear or have never had a smear previously to contact their GPs and make arrangements and get their smears done. But also, it's also to generate just a general talk and conversation and break down the barriers about even just talking about having a smear done. So what I want to show you now, Kalpana's very frantically trying to get this on screen, thank you,
Set up in the other room, so
is the campaign film that went live yesterday. And this
Does referring to your vagina as a
I'm
flower
hoping it's going to go viral through social media.
Does referring to your vagina as a flower make you feel a little bit sick? Is watching this video enough to make you want to hide inside your jumper? Are you playing it very small in the corner of your screen or covering your phone with your hand on the bus? Does the thought of getting your flower out for a smear test make you shiver? How does the thought of developing cervical cancer feel? 6 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer every week in Scotland. So it's time to stop fannying about and get tested. Let's nip cervical cancer in the bud.
I think a really powerful, hard-hitting, impactful and beautiful film that reminds women the importance of having their smear taken. To complement the national campaign, we have secured funding from the Scottish Government to build on the work that was done over the cervical cancer prevention and take forward, thank you, the local initiatives to involve women as we have done, to guide development of our work and share their stories to raise awareness. We're working to increase activity on social media channels and provide the opportunity for people to engage, and we can provide personal advice to queries that can arise. We're developing materials to support and promote locally as per the work that Wendy and Kapana have done to date, and build on those, particularly looking at Dundee as a capital of or the burgeoning cultural development within Dundee, and trying to work with partner agencies. And we also are looking to provide intensive support to GP practices in areas of socio-economic deprivation and reduced screening uptake. And that's looking at providing personalised phone calls, appointments, and working initially with a couple of practices in the Tayside area, but hoping to evaluate this, work on and build on this and roll it out more widely. We've got practice support via the Cancer Research UK Facilitator Programme, and we're also exploring provision of further information about cervical screening at the time of Hpv vaccination.
And welcome to Pitlochry.
So, just to summarise, I think this is a really important
it's
time.
It's my pleasure as Leader of the Council to welcome you all to this meeting with the Scottish Cabinet.
We have a huge
and it's my personal pleasure to be able to welcome First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, and members of the Cabinet who are with us here to discuss face-to-face the issues that we want to raise.
Oh, we're done?
And we're gathered here today in
very nearly had Nicola Sturgeon at Grand Round.
Yes, I know.
That's very good.
the issues facing the
Prescient.
economy.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions about their flower or otherwise?
When communities are confident.
Anyone? Any comments or questions?
that
If everybody needs to run to clinic, we totally understand, because we have over
not
a
only
bit.
is this magnificent
Yes.
building a great venue for theatre productions, it also makes the most of the scenery. It's an international
Thank you very much. That was a fantastic presentation. Congratulations. Well thought and well delivered. I think, Tayside, we know we have a disproportionate amount of poor sexual health outcomes, and obviously cervical cancer is one of them. And we've certainly accomplished a lot in Tayside in terms of reversing some of these, and in particular teenage pregnancy. And one of the main learning points we had from that was around partnership working. You've clearly identified the capacity issues. I think people accessing smears is really difficult, and within sexual health we have an awful lot of demands for smears which we're not always able to accommodate, unfortunately, except for our priority groups, which you've identified as some of the riskiest. One of the initiatives that we're taking forward, although we'd be interested to speak to you more about it, because all of these things do take resource, but we are upskilling all of the harm reduction nurses, the harm reduction nursing team with sexual health competencies, including smear taking, because I think opportunistic smears for some groups of individuals would be most effective. So being at the right place at the right time, so when they're coming in for needle exchange, when they're coming in for methadone titration, etc., being able to undertake their smears then. So that's something that we're taking, although we can't see everybody for routine smears, we are targeting some of the high-risk groups to get their smears done. That was a comment more than a question.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, excellent.
Expecting for the question, thinking, oh, I need the answer.
But that's absolutely right, Sarah. I mean, we've got a list of all the sort of vulnerable groups that we need to reach out to, because people talk about putting notices up in gyms and hairdressers, which is fine, but if you've got time to go to the gym and the hairdresser, you've probably got time to go for your smear. We need to get the people who've got really chaotic lifestyles and get them through, as you say, the substance abuse service or whatever.
So, I think this is an exciting time for Pitlochry and the surrounding area, and it's therefore very appropriate and timely for us to welcome the First Minister and her Cabinet to hear from us today. So I hope you enjoy your day, and if you have the time, and if the members of the Cabinet have the time, you might want to take the opportunity to explore the area beyond the catered grounds and see just some of the what this great region has to offer. So thank you all for being here today, and I'll now hand you over to Joe Fitzpatrick, MSP, the Minister.
And I think the other thing to mention, sorry if we're going on a bit, but about the GPs, it's about being mutually supportive, so in a way, we've got it easy. We always take a smear with a chaperone. We've got a tilting bed. We can sometimes use local anaesthetic. People take smears in the community. They're on their own, and it's really difficult. So I think if we do any sort of drop-in, or what I'd like to call pop-up clinics, we will probably do those in collaboration with the community smear takers, so that they can come in, possibly with their difficult women, and take the smear with us, and we can maybe show them a few tricks, or maybe just by them using our equipment, it'll be easier for everybody. So this is not about being confrontational with anybody. This is about working in partnership with people.
This morning, the First Minister and Deputy First Minister formally opened Scottish and Southern Energy's superb new visitor centre at the Fiscali Dam, and the Cabinet then held its regular weekly meeting within the centre, and I know that the whole Cabinet were
highly commendable efforts. Great work, team. Just one note, probably sort of cultural and language barriers is probably another thing that we need to think about. I did sort of breast cancer awareness prevention in Forth Valley before with sort of the really, as you say, it's getting the leaders probably for other ethnic minority as well. I think that will be a group that we should probably be thinking.
Yes. Joe's Trust have done quite a considerable amount of work on that eating, identifying, minority groups, ethnic groups, and they've got their own community champions talking about it. So when we do our final thing, if we identify pockets like that within Dundee, hopefully we can take a campaigner from there.
Righto, we'll bring things to a close. I find the grand rounds that I know nothing about to be the most interesting. I always learn stuff, and this is, as I mentioned, way below the diaphragm. So it's. And thank you for those pictures, by the way. I was just tucking into my lunch. It's gratifying. Next week, LGBT week, with Graham Leslie, who's going to talk about I don't know what. Pride and Prejudice, apparently. So there's an intriguing title. So you all must come, bring a friend. And remember, if you can't come, then this is recorded and it goes online. Just Google Dundee Grandad Archive and you'll find it. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you to our multidisciplinary team who presented so well today.